Hello and welcome to Movie Phone Call, a podcast show recorded on my iPhone. Today we're going to be doing a bit of a double feature show focusing on two foreign films that have been getting huge Oscar buzz. The Artist, directed by Michel Hazanavicius, a French filmmaker, and The Skin I Live In, directed by Pedro Almodovar. I'll also be doing my top 5 countdown to my favorite mad scientist roles. Don't worry, it will make sense by the end of the show. But first, let us begin with The Artist. It's hard to describe the magic that Michel Hazanavicius has brought to The Artist. It's a rare treat of a movie, to be quite honest, because no one really seems to have the drive to make a silent film anymore. I guess the last silent movie, or almost traditional silent movie, if anything, was Mel Brooks' silent movie, but it was more of a satire than anything. This is more of a real homage to the golden age of Hollywood. This isn't unfamiliar territory for Michel Hazanavicius, being that he's directed films with the same star of The Artist, Jean Dujardin, who was fantastic, by the way. We'll get into that later. But Hazanavicius has directed the OSS 117 series. So far, there's only 2 films, and I believe there's talk of a 3rd movie, but well, more on that soon, I hope. But those movies were focused on the 1960s spy films, sort of the James Bond movies. So you can see that he has this sort of knack of directing films based on movies of a certain era which they came out of, if that makes any sense whatsoever. He likes to, reignite the sort of stylistic qualities of those type of films. If you look at the OSS movies, they do ring back to that, classic 1960s, steady cam, not fast-paced, sharply witted humor type of spy movies. Even its lead, Jean Dujardin, he really ignites the sort of Sean Connery, debonair spy man. But in The Artist, Hazanavicius decides to pay a homage to like I said, the golden age of Hollywood, and more importantly, the silent era. Jean Dujardin stars as George Valentine, a Hollywood actor who is at the top of his game. He seems to be making hit movie after hit movie. And he recently, out of nowhere, on accident, meets this nobody girl named Peppy Miller at the premiere of one of his latest films. And there's this sort of, spark created between the two of them. And she gives him a kiss on the cheek, and he smiles, they take a picture together, and you think that's where it's going to end. But Hollywood seems to have their eye on Peppy Miller. Who is this mysterious girl, and what has she done? And that's when the turning point begins for George and Peppy's careers, where George starts to fall and Peppy starts to rise. And it's at the point where Peppy has an extra job on George's latest film, where she plays a dancer. And there's this really cute scene where George and Peppy have doing take after take of this one particular dance scene. And you can see that George is mistakenly doing this on purpose, just so he can have more time with her. And he says to her that if she's going to be different than all the other stars, she needs to have something that they don't have. And he gives her a beauty spot on her cheek, sort of like, that iconic touch, if you will. And there lies the irony of that. Once that beauty spot is laid upon Peppy Miller, it sort of triggers her career. She first gets extra positions, then she gets background jobs, and she gets a few more dancing background jobs, then she gets a supporting role, then a lead supporting role, until finally she gets her first lead role in a movie, like I said, ironically enough, called Beauty Spot. And it seems to overshadow George's career once the talkie films are starting to take rise. No one wants to seem to work with silent actors anymore. So, it begs the question, does this film sort of parallel what's going on in Hollywood today? I like to think so. I mean, you're looking at many changes that Hollywood has gone through over the years. Beginning with silence, then talkies, and then going to color, and then filmmakers, they like to keep exploring new advances in filmmaking. And right now the latest craze is talking about 3D, and I believe James Cameron and Peter Jackson have been discussing shooting films in 48 frames and 60 frames per second. They're saying it's the next wave of filmmaking. So it seems that this very simple story kind of foreshadows coming events of film history. Film's always changing, no matter how you see it, it is changing. What I really liked about this movie was that there is just this pure charm to the entire film. I mean, I personally love silent films. I think that what makes them so special is the performances by the actors. Since they have to do more emotions with their body, more physical emotions than um, talking. They can't talk. So it was great to see these two actors who are French actors. I've already discussed Jean Dujardin, but Benice Bejo plays Pepe Miller, and she's also married to Hazanavicius. The two of them together, they just bring this old style quality that you haven't really seen since probably like the days of like Gene Kelly, and it really is refreshing to see actors who will embrace that style of performance. And the finale in the movie, there's this quite elaborate dance sequence that just screams musical theater or musical filmmaking, and it kind of ends on a very special note. I kind of like to think of it. It rings back to a Mel Brooks silent movie where one person gets to say something in a silent movie. So I won't spoil it for anything. The technique is very basic in this film, although there is one particular sequence where George has a dream about sound pictures, and I think that Hazanavicius utilizes sound quite nicely in that sequence. And I don't want to ruin it, but it is a very memorable sequence, probably one of the best in the entire film. The story overall, it's a little it's been done. Let's just say that the story itself has been done before. It's not 100% original. If you look back at Singing in the Rain, that movie and this film both deal with the exact same premise. A silent actor is not going to accept the talkies, and the talkies are starting to take over the silent era. It's really the same story, just done in a different way. That doesn't necessarily make the movie bad whatsoever. It's just one of those things that bothered me that it seems to borrow from that movie. And in a lot of sense, I guess this movie borrows a lot of different things from different silent films. And I mean, you can look at there's a few notable nods to Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton movies. So if you're a fan of silent films like myself, you're definitely gonna love this movie. I would definitely recommend you go see The Artist, and it's definitely a big Oscar contender. Will it win Best Picture? I'm not really sure. I'm still leaning towards either Hugo or The Descendants, but this movie does have um, some big Oscar contending qualities. If anything, Jean Dujardin might win Best Actor, but we'll see what happens.